So we're sitting here in the living room here in my living room, Rolina and my living room with Eric Kolwitz, a friend of mine that I met. We met at church in a spirituality class at First Unitarian. And the most spiritual thing I got out of that class, Eric, and it was a very good class, and I learned a lot. The most spiritual thing I got was a relationship with you. Um, so tell us, who is Eric?
Eric is 30 years old, a seeker of knowledge and wisdom, I guess. I like to write poetry and read poetry, and I really like political science and those sorts of things. And yeah, I really, really love spiritual life and theology. I read a lot of theology too, and I find a lot of joy in learning from other people's wisdom and their experience. I think that's extremely valuable. I like hearing people's stories and where they're from, and how they came to be who they are. I think those are the more serious things that really get to like the core of people. I've never really been good at like talking about like sports or the weather or stuff, or mundane little stuff. I don't know. I crave the difficult, crave the hard things for some reason.
So where are you from, Eric?
I am from a small town in Alabama called Oakman, although I was born in Southern California. And I grew up and had a very, very unique life. I very much so grew up in an analog world, despite things were moving much faster in the world around me. I grew up in the country and in a very, very quiet place, almost like I grew up in a different time. That's more akin to that of greatest generation instead of a millennial generation. Yeah, I'm very much so like the product of my grandmother. I didn't have like a loving family. Came from a pretty like sad story full of death, and my sister committed suicide, and before she turned 18, and a whole bunch of other stuff. But I'm from the country, and despite I was born in Southern California, I'm very much so from the country.
And you shared with me that you were kind of a strict religious um, background, conservative Christian background.
Oh yeah, yeah. That's right. I grew up in a Southern Baptist tradition where I started singing in a choir when I was probably about 8 or 9 years old with my grandmother at a Baptist church, and then uh, through going through church camp, I found the Independent Churches of Christ, which are kind of a conservative evangelical denomination that's very much so out of that soul scriptura or Bible word only type of doctrine, which is very different from where me and you met. Um, I can say like that church that faith tradition I found there, despite it being rooted in theology that I don't agree with, what maybe Reverend Forrest Church would have called a God too small. Great guy, Forrest Church, yeah. Well, conflicted guy, but he wrote some really good books. I think I think it gave me the community that I needed when I didn't have one. So yes, I'm very much so like a product of the old way of doing things like church 3 times a week, Bible study, Bible class. I was groomed in many ways to be a minister in that tradition, despite I broke with it as I learned more about the world.
So and you ended up here going to Metro, right? No.
Yeah. I left Alabama in 2015. it's a very long and sad story there, but I didn't love where I was at, what I was doing, and I needed a change. And yeah, I moved to Denver in 2015, found my best friend on Craigslist, and went to MSU Denver and studied political science and graduated in class of 2020, which, I thought that it was going to be great graduating college, but making it in COVID, oh man, that was pretty terrible. Graduating in COVID. But yeah, I'm a roadrunner and consider myself a Denverite. I love it here. I'm not sure I'll ever leave.
Yeah, yeah, and tell me about if you don't mind, man. Tell me about some of the jobs you've had your work life.
Oh boy, I started working when I was 16. I worked at an Arby's uh, early morning, wake up at 3 o'clock in the morning to go work for about 5, 6 hours. I've also started volunteer firefighting in Alabama when I was about 15 or 16 years old, became an EMT at 19. I've worked in restaurants, front of the house, back in the house here in Denver, a whole bunch of different ones. I know that hard life. I've also taught driving school and music lessons, and in 2020 when I graduated from MSU Denver, George Floyd was murdered, and I was interning at the American Red Cross at the time, and I went out several nights and I was street medicing people, just trying to help people however I could who were out demonstrating and getting a sense for how people felt. And I saw quite a lot of stuff out there, and on the streets of Denver. I could go on in detail, but Colorado passed police reform, and I said, this is my time. I came from a public safety background, very much so a public servant in my upbringing and that sort of thing, despite I stopped off many places along the way. But I went to the police academy, and then I went to work at a sheriff's office, and because I wanted to be the change I wanted to see in the world. And I found that change is not really workable from at least as it appeared to me working in law enforcement.
So you became an officer.
Well, technically a deputy, but I worked in jail. I had more problems with people I worked with than I did with people that were actually incarcerated. And it was a hard thing to figure out, and was not necessarily a positive experience at all for me or from what I witnessed.
That sounds like a hard thing, man. Yeah. How long did you work there?
I was there about a year, and then I got effectively pushed out because my politics didn't really align with theirs, and how I believe you should treat people and how you should talk about people is very different from that environment that I was working in. So I was a threat to that, threat to their way of doing things. So yeah, they made my life very difficult, despite I was very good at my job. Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know if that's politics, man. That's just your humanity. That's how you treat people. I don't know if that's politics or humanity. I mean,
I think
maybe
it
they're
very much.
both.
I think you're right. I think it is my humanity. My humanity drove me into that situation, but working there and doing that line of work, however, my humanity also made it impossible for me to continue doing it the way that it had been done. So I think that's hard, very hard. I think you hit the nail on the head there.
Yeah, and then where'd you end up after you got out of the sheriff's department?
Well, I stopped off and did a semester in school I thought I wanted to get a job in like tech and be a software engineer or something like that, but I didn't enjoy it, and I was really angry and disillusioned with the systems of criminal justice in the United States and the institution of American policing. But I moved to, on a whim, I moved to Guadalajara, Jalisco in Mexico, and I got a job at a private high school in Mexico, and I taught English as a foreign language. And it was really great, working with kids after being in an environment that was very, very soul-sucking and humanity robbing. It helped me find myself again, and I think that was beautiful, very beautiful, and very powerful for me.
Wow. And you share with me that you ended up in a band, right?
Yeah, I played trumpet, right? I did some trumpet in a mariachi band in college, and I wanted to learn more about it. So Guadalajara is kind of like the mecca of mariachi trumpet and mariachi in general. And I went down there and I had a blind audition with a mariachi band in Mexico, and I won't mention who they are, but first gig where they took me, we ended up playing in a Mexican prison in Guadalajara, and that was a lot, really, really interesting. Like playing trumpet in a mariachi band inside of a Mexican prison. It's not where I really envisioned going and being after, working inside of a jail, going and spending time in a Mexican prison.
In jail again, but this time you're playing a trumpet, right?
Yeah, exactly. Instead of telling people here, sign here, and this is your date, and step up to the line, let me fingerprint you, take your picture, and tell them no to things. I was playing trumpet very badly around a lot of very gifted musicians and a lot of incarcerated folks. Prison in Mexico is really interesting. So like you can basically, if you can pay for it, you can have it in prison. And so like we were hired to like play for some sort of really important guy, right, who had some very important people in his organization or whatever in that prison, right? And it was for Father's Day, right? It was a great celebration, but it's weird. We had our own security. It was like a prison gang like escorted us everywhere, and you would look in the corner and there'd be signs that say like no cell phones or anything like that, and guys are just, guys in this guy's group are, all on their cell phones. There's like bottles of tequila like out on the tables and stuff, and like I looked around, not a single guard in the whole place ever looked that direction. Like it was like a black hole over where the band was. Me and the band were playing.
What an experience, man!
Yeah, it was. It was crazy too. Like one of the guys, they had a trustee, like a guy who's helped run the prison. Like, but he's an inmate. Like he vetted me, came up to me, asked me all these questions before I got closer to like the guy in charge or whatever, and like he asked me about where I was from and all that, all this stuff. They just ran me through like 50 questions, because like me being like a tall, like, white man from Alabama, like I clearly didn't like fit the typical identity of somebody that shows up in a mariachi band to play inside of a Mexican prison, right? So this one guy walked up to me. He's like, "Hey, why aren't you playing so much?" And he's like 7 foot tall, and I said, and I looked up and I said, "No, necesito mi partituras. I need my music." I told him in Spanish. He's like, "No, bro. Tell me in English." I was like, "Yeah, it's like, oh, I need more music. I don't know many of these songs that these guys are playing. I always played with music." And then he said, "Hey man, is it like your first day?" I was like, "Yeah man, it's my first time with these guys." And he's like, "You're doing great." And this guy, he's like 7 foot tall, 300 pounds of muscle. He says, "You're doing great, man. Come here." And he like picks me up, about breaks me in half, fills my back. I figured out he was like checking me for wires or something, but yeah, he was a very encouraging guy. You know, despite you know, he looked like a dude with a very large capacity for breaking people and things. You know, yeah, but seemed to be a nice guy despite he was wearing an orange jumpsuit. Yeah.
So Eric, just backing up a little bit, the time that the time that you were in the sheriff and being a guard, um, I can sense some trauma there, man. Some hard times, some pain. Am I going up the wrong tree or?
I mean, I'll tell you about it. Yeah, it's a hard experience for everybody involved, inmates and the guards too. It's like nobody wants to be there. Nobody's happy. Nobody's having a good day when you're in a jail or a prison, and you just end up with you have a lot of people that are broken in one's face, and the staff too breaks them, and everybody's everybody's looking for whatever shred of humanity they can find. Although some people on staff they kind of see those people behind the bars as like criminals and like just animals to be kept in a cage, when in reality, after hearing some of those incarcerated people's stories, it's one wrong choice or one other choice. Even in me in my life, I could have been that person in that cage. And I'd tell those other people I worked with, one other choice, or if you made a different decision this way, or if you didn't have power, or you didn't come from people that had power, you too would end up in that cage. I saw a lot of sorrow, especially in a young man who's gonna go away for murder. He was just a young kid, but he was brown and Mexican American. Didn't have a lot of opportunity, didn't have a lot of guidance or expectation to be somebody, but he had a drug problem and he killed somebody. He killed somebody when he was high, and his life is forever changed for that. And he's forever marked. He's going to be marked for the rest of his life. And but one of the beautiful things about that young man is he is an incredibly talented artist. I would see him always painting, drawing, coloring, making. He had so much talent, and that artistic side of that. I worked really hard to try to nurture that and encourage him with that as I could. I remember driving him to the dentist once, and we're in the dentist's office. I know he's fine, but I'm there, uniform, taser, all that stuff on. He's there, he's got his shackles on, his jumpsuit. It's funny. You walk into a waiting room with somebody like that. Hell, everybody wants to run away from you. Nobody wants to sit by these guys, So I mean, I can't blame them either, but. I remember in the waiting room there was a lot of art in there, and I said, hey, I think you're really good. And he's like, I told him about that. You see that? And he said, he's like, Kolwitz, you think I can make something that pretty? I said, I know you absolutely can. I know you can. I know that's within you. So I find those stories really, really precious. Also, I remember I drove a lady who she was having some difficulty, and I took her to the hospital from the jail, right? And she was an older black lady. She was fine. She was fine as a person. Like never caused any problems. Always polite and kind to everybody. But she just had a drinking problem. And whenever she drank, that'd get her into trouble, right? And then she wouldn't do whatever the court said, and so she'd end up getting picked up for not like listening to what the court says. But I remember driving there. Got her to the hospital. She got the care she needed. But then I remember like going back in. She's very short, and like whenever we move people to places, they have to wear these shackles on their ankles as well as on their wrists. And I remember she's like, I'm having trouble getting into the car because we had this big vehicle, like kind of high off the ground, and it's hard to get in and out of. And she asked me, she was like, yeah, I'm not sure I can get back up in there. And I was like, would you like me to help you? And she said yes. But then, as I walked up closer to her to help her get back in, and my camera's running and everything else, but I could see like the absolute terror in her eyes, like the terror in her body, because me being a very very tall white man wearing this uniform, and I'm in front of her, and I'm go to very gently help her after talking to her to get her back in. She just about had a panic attack and broke down because I'm this person, an authority, and I had to, I helped her to get into the car, but at the same time, like that triggered quite a trauma response in her, because something tells me that somebody else wearing a uniform in the past, and in her experience, being a little familiar with her record, since we read all that whenever somebody comes in and out of the jail, we see a cycle of everything, where they've been locked up, all that stuff, their whole history. She's terrified of people in uniforms because I imagine somebody was very unkind to her. I imagine that she was in that moment reliving some trauma of something that happened in the past. And that was terrifying and hard for her. Despite, she was like, hey, can you help me get up here? Can you help me get back into this car? That really sat with me. That's hard. And that's really so many people's realities.
Eric, brother, I wish you healing from some of that trauma that you felt being a sheriff. And I hope you never forget any of those lessons you learned in there.
I won't forget any of them. I think about those people. I think about those people maybe more than I should, about their lives and their stories.
I don't know if that's possible, brother. Don't forget forgetting about them. Don't forget those stories. Just moving on here, brother. You shared with me some of your living situations you've gone through, going to school, working, getting through life. Do you mind sharing some of that?
Yeah, for sure. So at different points during my education and going to college, I've had to live in a tent for a few months at a time, which has never been ideal. I I've always tried to. Denver's, as you know, it's a pretty brutal place to live, and I think I can speak a lot of truth to that this city can be a very very brutal place to live if you don't have and you don't make a lot of money. So while I was a college student and I was going to MSU, I would always try to find one of the absolute cheapest, most convenient place that I could live. So I've lived in some places that that other people just would not, like in conditions that some people would say are like not safe or not sanitary or whatever. But it was all okay because I I lived in places where I could manage to pay my bills and be okay, since I didn't have, like, a family to take care of me. Um, One time though, I was living in a spot, and really old house, in just south of City Park on Steel Street, and I was living in a basement room, in a room that like these other four rooms were all on one like breaker, and there were about four of us guys living down there. One of the rooms had a fire in it, and they didn't really do anything to fix it. They just closed it off and stopped renting it out. So like I'd look up above my head, and there'd be like, you could see like the old insulation or whatever of the floor crumbling above me, of the second floor, like, yeah, just above my bed in a little room and stuff. But I was okay with it because I could afford it. But one day I got a letter from somebody in the management company. Hey, we sold the place. By the way, your lease isn't your lease isn't valid anymore. You gotta get out. So they sold the place, and yeah, they brought in the 4-star, those property management companies that drive the cost of living up to ridiculous levels all over the Denver metro area. Got a notice to quit from 4-star. Said you got 30 days to basically get out. And I was like, well, this is terrible. I went down to the office. I talked to them. Hey, can we work on this? You got anything else? They're like, well, you got to fill out an application. You got to meet these income requirements. And I was like, well, I don't meet those income requirements, because that's everything you got is basically, really bright and shiny and pretty and stuff, but it's like 2 or 3 times as much as what I'm paying. So even though I was a good tenant, paid my rent on time, and still got my deposit back, I didn't have enough money to be able to get another spot to live. So I was working up in Idaho Springs, and had another job in Denver. So for that entire summer, slept in a tent in Idaho Springs, or camped in the car, or I broke into the building where I was living before and squatted, since they had the lights on and I could take a shower there. So it was not ideal, and I had to basically spend an entire summer working every day, but still not making enough money to be able to get and secure housing for myself in Denver, and that was pretty terrible. So like I understand, like our homeless brothers and sisters out there on the street, that this world hates you if you don't have a lot of property. It hates you if you're poor. It seeks to destroy you and just grind you down, because like when you don't have a kitchen to cook your food, then you got to buy stuff, and that stuff's more expensive. Or you don't have a place to wash your clothes, then you got to spend a lot of time and money sitting at a place where you pay more to wash your clothes. So it's rough.
Yeah, brother. Capitalism. I say this a lot, man. Capitalism kills, rapes, maims. It's it's brutal.
I strongly agree with you, Arnie. I think we built ourselves a world where we decide that we have people that are worth having, and then people that aren't worth having. And from my experience in my life, I've been that one of those people that isn't worth having. And also my experience working in a jail, I got to know some of the stories of those people, that they themselves are also, what our society says are not worth having.
So, but now, man, you're unemployed, but you're headed towards Isla School of Theology, right? You got
That's
accepted, right?
Yes, sir. I am. I've got accepted to the Isle School of Theology, and I want to be a minister. I want to help care about people and try to convince other people that they need to care more about people in this world too. And that's the desire. I tried working in the corporate world. It didn't really fit me much. I found out in that kind of corporate environment, they pay you really good, but they kind of expect you to not speak truth to power. They want you to be quiet and controllable. They want you to toe the line and believe whatever lie it is that of the day that helps you get through it. And I had a lot of problems in that kind of environment because I'm not exactly a soft spoken person. I definitely don't believe that people are commodities, despite our world tries to attribute a value to everyone. I think that's wrong, and I see going to ILIF, trying to become a minister and a social worker. I think that's it feels natural to me. It feels right. I just want to be a servant. But the thing is, I realize I can be a lot better servant instead of wearing a fire department uniform. I can be a lot better of a servant instead of wearing a badge and carrying a gun. I can actually build good relationships with people, help them find community and purpose and meaning. And I think that's what the world needs more of. We don't need any more winners. We don't need any more people that are making six-figure incomes and own 3 houses and have more wealth in this world than they'll ever need. We don't need more of those people in this world. We need more people that are humble, that are willing to try to work towards transforming the society and speaking truth to power and trying to right whatever wrongs we can in this world. I think that's what we need more of if we're gonna survive, if we're gonna try to fix this place.
That's beautiful, man. So, Erica, just wrapping up, man. Just you've been through a lot. Life's not easy for you right now, and this world is very, full of pain, and it's people are going through hard times, and you see it. You're not blind to it. You don't turn your eye to it. But what keeps you going?
I'll say this, to quote Emily Dickinson: "Hope is the thing with feathers. It's the thing with feathers. It floats." If you think about a feather, it'll drift down a little bit as it's carried towards the ground by gravity on the wind, but sometimes you gotta just get under it and get a little puff, and it shoots back up there a little bit. My experience with this life is quite like that feather floating up and down. I've had times where, I've been absolutely destitute and don't have a hope in this world and think that everything is just destined to remain broken and unable to be fixed, and that there's a lot to be upset about and bitter about. However, I don't know, I find those things that rekindle that little bit of hope for me. Yeah, faith community is a very big part of that. Also, reading the words of ministers and leaders that have went before me, I think that's very important. I think about Reverend Dr. Brother Martin Luther King Jr. and he quoted a Unitarian minister, which I can't remember which one it was, but in one of King's speeches he said that the arc of the moral universe is long, but it steadily bends towards justice. It steadily bends towards justice. So with that, I try to think of myself as one of those bending forces. Whereas I know I can't fix everything in my lifetime, but if I didn't try to fix something, I don't know how I don't know how I could live with myself if I didn't at least try. That's how I keep hope. That's how I keep hope, no matter how bad it is. I like to read. Right now, I'm reading a book by. He was a Lutheran pastor. His name was Dietrich Bonhoeffer. Letters and Papers from Prison. And Bonhoeffer, he was a minister, right? But and a very accomplished one. He actually got offered a job at the Union Theological Seminary, which is near Columbia University in New York, and he left Germany and went and taught there. And this was all while Hitler was coming to power and in power in Germany, and he was called back to Germany to start an emergency seminary to try to counteract the forces of and the influences of the Nazis within German society. And his friends at Union begged him not to go, but he still went back, and he became part of the resistance movement to stop Hitler. The Gestapo found out about him, and they put him in prison. And he wrote all these beautiful letters showing that hope, that faith, and courage while he was in prison, before he was hung in Flossenburg concentration camp on one Sunday morning. That kind of persistence, that kind of hope, like we got to have that kind of hope for ourselves in our world, because if we can't muster that hope and that courage, then in reality, then that's truly when everything is lost. Whenever we all give up trying to fight for whatever it is or that we seek to fight for in this world.
Well, Eric, brother, you give me hope. You give me hope, man, and I just want to tell you how much I love you and appreciate you spending some time with me, man.
Yeah, man, happy to do it. I love you too, brother Arnie. You're great.
That was great. Appreciate it.